Fantastic. Thank you very much. Excited to be here tonight. Thank you for setting some time aside and looking forward to really digging into artificial intelligence. We've got people represented from all across the globe. This is awesome to see everyone, chatting in where you're coming from. Myself, I'm from Utah, kind of the home of a lot of different dental technology companies. So, artificial intelligence. My goal tonight is to really walk you through what AI is, why it's so relevant in healthcare and in dentistry specifically, and what its role is, especially on the clinical side in dentistry. So, to kind of start this off, I'd like to get into this question, and I know that everyone's cameras are off, and it's kind of hard asking, but I to really start off, I like to just ask, what is artificial intelligence? Now, if this was, a live audience, a lot of responses start coming back around, well, it's computers, it's algorithms, it's you put something in the computer and it puts something out. And we'll always have somebody that'll say, well, AI, it's going to take over the world and it's like Terminator and everything that we've seen on TV growing up. So, to really walk you through where AI came from, a little bit of the history and why it's so relevant, I want to just start off with talking about this movie. So, if anyone's seen this movie's called The Imitation Game. And fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, I thought it was really interesting. But this is a movie about a gentleman that was not talked about for years after World War II. But this gentleman, Alan Turing, is what this or is who this movie is about, is really kind of the godfather of artificial intelligence. So back during World War II, we had this massive problem. The Allies could not break the Nazi code. And this was really the code that was used for the Nazis to communicate between submarines and, from planes to really talk about where their next advance was going to be. And the Allies could not break this code. So Alan Turing comes into the picture, and he invents this computer, this machine, so to speak, that really, like, you can see this in a museum now, and it takes up like the whole space of a room. But this computer or this machine that he invented helped decode the Enigma, helped really break that Nazi code and help the Allies win World War II. And it's said that his invention of this machine, this computer, helped save about 14 million lives by ending the war when he did, which then led to the D-Day advancement and the end of World War II. Now, Alan said something long ago, right after all this took place. He said something that really gave kind of his outlook as to the power of this technology and where it was going and what it was capable of. He says in 1951, he said, it is customary to offer a grain of comfort in the form of a statement that some peculiarly human characteristic could never be imitated by a machine. And he goes on to say, I cannot offer such comfort, for I believe that no such bounds can be set. This is back in 1951. He knew that this was really a power that, he was just scratching the surface, this artificial intelligence, these computers, and what they could do. Now, you fast forward a few years, and, if I were to ask, what is this a picture of? A lot of you would probably get this, but what you're looking at is a picture of all of the computers that it took to send a man to the moon. Now, all of the computing power that you see represented in this picture right here today can actually now fit on my iWatch. So the rate at which technology has advanced and accelerated has really improved not just the processing abilities, the speed, and also the size of what it takes to be able to store some of these microchips. So, getting into the question of what is artificial intelligence, well, they're computer systems that can simulate the problem solving and decision making capabilities of the human mind. Now, this term artificial intelligence goes back to right after World War II. And Then a few years later, in 1980, this term machine learning comes into play. So artificial intelligence are these computer systems, right, that can simulate the problem solving and decision making capabilities. Machine learning, this is now where when these computers can now improve upon the outputs of what they're computing. Then we go into this term deep learning. Now, deep learning, not only can they improve and solve very complex problems, but now it gets into the decision-making capabilities. And this is really what simulates the neurocapacity of a human being. Um, so artificial intelligence, we think of it and we probably start thinking about, Chat GPT, we think about Terminator, we think about Tesla or self-driving cars. There's a lot of different types of artificial intelligence. So we're going to kind of break these down. And my goal tonight is to give you some real life examples of how these various forms of artificial intelligence are in play in our daily lives that we may or may not be aware of. So I'm going to introduce you to kind of the family tree of artificial intelligence. Okay. And this family tree of artificial intelligence, this really consists of five different branches. So the first branch, we're going to talk about supervised learning. So supervised learning, this is where you've got data sets that are labeled. Okay. So massive amounts of data that have gone through the process of labeling what each of these data points are have, and this is where we've trained the computers to recognize patterns, to also improve upon its accuracy. And this is primarily used today with different types of predictions, be that weather predictions or classifications. So the example that kind of breaks this down best for most is if we were to pull up your iPhone or Android. For those who are Android lovers, I know there's always one in the audience who changes our text, bubbles from blue to green. But I'm going to give you the example of an iPhone. So you can actually follow along with me if you'd like, but I want you to just go ahead and pull up your iPhones. And if you pull up your iPhone, I want you to go to the Photos app. So the Photos app, it's this little rainbow flowery looking app right here. And I want you to click onto that. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to pull up the search bar. So generally, I think it's at the bottom right-hand side, it'll pop up the search option. And you can go into the search bar, and I want you to type in something very generic. Okay, so the example that I'm going to give you is the example of a dog. So type in dog, and what it's going to do is it's going to instantly pull up all the pictures in your phone of a dog or a cat for our cat lovers. It's instantly categorizing all the pictures that look like a dog, a cat, or a tree. Okay. Now, I know that there's some of you that were like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that my phone could do this." And so now probably for the next rest of this presentation, you're going to be searching, pictures of teeth and implants and everything else. But the point here that I want to make is I have about 328 pictures of dogs in my phone. And there was one that popped up, one image or one picture that popped up that was not. This picture right here, it said that it was a dog, or it predicted or detected that here's a picture that probably is or looks like a dog. And I look at this and I'm thinking, man, AI got this wrong. I don't know how it thought this was a dog, but then the picture right next to it was my dog Rue. And you look at it and the color, the white, the brown, the same color. And I'm thinking, well, I can see why the computer, my phone, thought that the cow was a dog. So AI is not always 100% accurate. But for the most part, the trained eye can kind of see this and detect any areas that might be off, right? So the next branch that I want to talk about is this deep learning. So what is deep learning? Now, this kind of represents artificial neural networks. So similar to the neural network in your brain, all of the different computing components, basically communicating back and forth that are able to compute and go through large data sets. Now, deep learning has the ability to learn and to improve upon its accuracy as well, and really get into some complex problems that are asked of the computer. Okay, so if any of you, and actually, you know what? Go ahead and put it into the chat if you'd like. How many of you? You can just respond and just respond with Chat GPT if you use or have used Chat GPT on a regular basis. Go ahead and put that in the chat. I'm really curious here. And there's going to be some that may not have heard of Chat GPT. So if you've never heard of Chat GPT, and if you have kids that are in school, and your kids maybe were kind of, failing classes, maybe they were, um, D students, possibly F students, and then overnight, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when Chat GPT really blew up. All right, I have some people chatting in here saying they use Chat GPT multiple times a week, never used it. Some that have never heard about it, or heard about it but not used it. So like I was saying, if you've got kids in school that all of a sudden turned the corner and they were F students, D students, and then all of a sudden were A students, they probably know what ChatGPT is. The example that I'm going to give you here, now you can go online. This is a free site. You can go to ChatGPT, you can pull this up. This is basically harnessing all of the information on the internet, mountains of data, mountains of information, and it's way better than a search bar. In fact, I use this now more than I use Google to research or to ask anything. So if you're in the practice, you ever need to write a letter, maybe it's a patient dismissal letter, or you need to write a long document, a newsletter, even for your patients, you can leverage ChatGPT. So again, I just went to ChatGPT, and in the search bar here, let me just go back. I'm going to put something very specific. Like I want to write an email designed for a dental practice to send to their patients to reactivate overdue patients. This is how fast. Now I did a screenshot. So this is how fast ChatGPT is actually computing all of that data and information, writing you an email that is ready for you to just put your name, your title, your dental practice, your phone number in and press send. Now, if I read this email and I'm like, oh, I like it, but I actually want there to be more of a focus or an emphasis on perio, put that in the chat and press enter. It's going to rewrite that email that was just written with more of a focus or an emphasis on periodontal disease, saying, hey, are you experiencing like bleeding of the gums? Are you experiencing this or that? If so, you may be a candidate, or we might need to bring you in and do a thorough check of XYZ. So office managers, marketers are using this all the time. This is a phenomenal tool to write long sets of emails. In fact, you can even, for those trainers out there or those that are like, on a diet, you can actually go in and say, okay, I want you to come up with a full week's meal plan that is macro friendly, right? And it will detail out a full shopping list and meal plan for you. There's really very few limits that it has when you put in prompts. So this is an example of deep learning, right? Now the next example that I want to give you of deep learning involves a story with my two boys. So I have twin boys at home, um, and if I've got anyone who's got twins at home, these are my boys. They're identical boys. They're now 6 years old, and yep. In fact, they usually look like this. They got messy faces, but you can almost just like see the mischief in their eyes. Right? You can almost just tell that these two together are trouble. Um, Now I want to address something here. This is really important. One of the comments about ChatGPT, it makes many errors, so it should be reviewed and edited by a person. 1,000%. 1,000%. In fact, here's a great example of how AI can help get you maybe 80, 90% of the way there, but really is not a replacement for the human component. Okay. And I wanted to call that out because I'm going to be coming back to that in this course, talking about how AI is not necessarily always 100% accurate and should never be leaned upon without also having humans there to interpret and to ensure. So it's really a tool that humans and computers can come together to use. Let me go back to my boys here. So this is Finn and Dax, okay, identical twin boys. Now I'm in my office and I'm working away. Now these two, they look alike, they sound alike, and we learned that Finn and Dax, they found out what Alexa was because all of a sudden we got a shipment at our door that was a bunch of Legos. And I'm telling my wife, I'm like, why are you ordering all these Legos? And she's like, I'm not ordering them. I thought you were ordering them. And then I realized, I thought, okay, hold on. So I go on and I pull up my Amazon account. Sure enough, I see all these orders that have been put in, not not by the phone, not on the computer, but through an Alexa device. So we learned that, these two boys found it magical that you could just speak into a box, and all of a sudden you would have whatever the genie wishes appears at your door. Well, we decided to put parental controls around Alexa, and we actually have on the main floor, we've got kind of a few of these devices. One that controls a thermostat, one that is supposed to be kid friendly, and then we have like a Sonos soundbar that has it built in. So we put these parental controls around, and I'm sitting in my office. And I'm sitting in my office, and I hear Finn. I hear Finn, and he goes up to the one of these devices, and he says, "Alexa, I want you to play the Lego theme song." And immediately responds back and says, "I'm sorry, Finn, you don't have permission to use this device." And I'm like, yes, I win. Dad won, kid none. And then he gets his brother. He says, "Hey, Dax, come here." He says, "Hey, ask it to play the Lego theme song." And then, it says, "I'm sorry, you don't have permission, Dax, to use this device." And all of a sudden, I'm in my office and I hear that. And I'm like, wait a minute. So then I run upstairs. I run upstairs and the boys look like they've been caught red-handed. And they're like, "No, I didn't do it. We didn't order anything." I'm like, "No, no, no, no. I want you to ask it again." So I get Finn to ask it. And it says, "I'm sorry, Finn, you don't have permission to use this device." And then I said, "Dax, how about you give it another try?" And Dax does it. It says, "I'm sorry, Dax, you don't have permission to use this device." And then I asked it, and it all of a sudden started playing. Now, here's the point that I want to make. I never once programmed my Alexa device as to who my boys were, what their names were, or what they sounded like. But yet, learning in the background, listening in the background, it was able to not only differentiate their names and who they were, but also the wavelengths, the patterns of their voice. And it was learning and improving and knew who Finn sounded like, knew who Dax sounded like based upon the conversations that we're making. So I know this is a little scary, and this is where a lot of us are like, "Oh my gosh, AI is going to take over the world." But this is an example of deep learning where it can constantly improve on accuracy levels that the human sometimes cannot even decipher. So the next branch that I want to talk about is automated task management. This one here, we are going to see this one rise up a lot in our industry because it comes down to increasing the efficiency in practices across the globe. So this is where it really is able to automate routine tasks. Okay, it improves the efficiency, and also there is a component of learning and adapting to it. Now, I'm going to give you an example again. These are all examples that are more kind of outside of the practice so that we can be thinking about how these might apply, right? And some examples that you might be using. The example that I want to give of automated task management is this. This is what's called an 8 sleep pod. I have no affiliation with this except for the fact that I bought it. Okay. What you're looking at is this is a mattress. This is a mattress topper. It is a smart mattress topper. So it has not only does it have sensors throughout the top of the mattress, but what looks like a computer tower, this is actually a water container that sends water through the mattress in coils back and forth on two different sides of the bed. Okay, so you can actually adjust on your phone if you sleep hot or sleep cold, you can adjust the temperature. Now, not only can you adjust the temperature, but it starts to learn and to sense when you're falling into REM sleep, when you're falling into deep sleep, and it will automatically bring the temperature on the mattress down to keep you in deep sleep longer. And then it also learns how you sleep, when you sleep, so that it starts adjusting the temperatures based upon how you sleep to improve your overall sleep. It's amazing. Now, when you wake up, I know my wife always asks me, she's like, "Hey, how'd you sleep?" And now, before I can even answer of like how I'm feeling, I go to my phone, I pull up all my sleep tracking apps, which is tied to the mattress, and I'm like, actually, looks like I slept okay. I slept okay, right? Um, Now, Now with this, this is learning patterns. It's learning patterns. It is again continually learning and improving overall efficiency. And I don't have to touch it. I don't have to program it or anything. So the next branch that I want to talk about is predictive analytics. So I just showed all of these different trackers. But predictive analytics, this example really comes down to, well, let me back up. If you've ever been in conversation around your friends or family talking about something that maybe you like, and then you go onto Instagram, and all of a sudden there's an ad that pops up on Instagram that is about what you've been talking about. That is an example of predictive analytics. It starts to learn your patterns of what you like, what you look at, maybe your shopping patterns. Because here's the thing, my Instagram account, shortly after I bought my 8 sleep mattress, I get one of these ads that pop up, the Aura Ring, because it learned that, you know what, I've been talking about this sleep tracking. My shopping patterns, I've bought this from Instagram before, so it's like, oh, you might like this. Well, my wife thought it was crazy. She's like, you already have a mattress that does your sleep tracking, and yet I'm a sucker. I got it. I love it. And so if you don't have one, you should check it out. But it was able to predict my patterns, and it knows this is kind of how AI is used, especially in marketing and targeting and whatnot. Now, the majority of our course tonight, we're going to talk about narrow AI. So this is very task specific. Now, this is where whatever you program it to do, it's not really going to step out of the bounds of what you've programmed it to do. Okay, so it's a subset of rules and boundaries, and it's going to perform on that far better than the human could perform. And this is really the most common form of artificial intelligence. So the example here that I want to give is, if you've ever used one of these apps, if any of my plant lovers out there, okay, if you've ever used one of these apps, um, you can actually take a picture of a plant and it will pretty much spit out a treatment plan for your plant. It will tell you if the plant is overwatered, underwatered, if you need fertilizer, if it has bugs. I mean, it's amazing. You can take a picture of your grass and it will tell you what you need to do to make your grass look good. So this example, it's is very narrow-minded, meaning that it's been programmed to recognize patterns, okay? And it does that because this is really kind of a different form we're going to talk about, computer vision. We'll get into the definition of this here in just a second. Now, computer vision, for example, how are we going to program a computer to recognize what an apple is? This requires us to scan hundreds, thousands of pictures of apples into a computer, where it then breaks down these pixels into basically ones and zeros to start to recognize the patterns that are correlated with what an apple is, all the different shapes, all the different colors to determine what an apple is. And eventually, we'll be able to improve the accuracy that if you were to put up an orange next to an apple, it would be able to tell you what's an apple and what's an orange. But think about this. There are a lot of different variations of what an apple is. You've got an apple with decay. You know where I'm going with this. You've got an old moldy apple. You've got a sliced apple. So you have to program the computer and show, basically scan in all these different variations of what an apple is in order to train the computer as to what to recognize. Okay, now we in everyday life, how this is utilized is, in the apple orchards where people used to go out and they would have to look at the apples after they pick them for the quality before they put them in the basket. Now all of these apples in an apple orchard can now all go through one of these conveyor belts where you have a computer with a camera that is scanning all of the pictures of apples and is able to knock out or take out all of the bad apples and keep the ones that are in. And so this basically saves hours and hours of time and thousands of dollars instead of having somebody there looking at every apple one by one. All right. So this form is called computer vision. It is a field of computer science that focuses on enabling computers to identify and understand objects and people in images and videos. So the main example that I want to share where this was really implemented into our everyday life overnight was right around 9/11. Right around 9/11, we had this massive problem. How are we going to screen hundreds of thousands of travelers every day. I remember being able to walk up to the jetway, right, to pick up my dad when he would travel. I could walk all the way up and see him come down the jetway, get off the plane, and then 9/11 happened, and TSA, which wasn't TSA at the time, really had this huge problem. They needed to now figure out how they were going to increase security and scan hundreds of thousands of travelers. So they invented this device, this machine, this big X-ray machine. For any of you who remember when these came out, there was kind of a big uproar around this because there was privacy issues. Now, when these were scanning and taking X-rays of travelers every day, there in the programming process, there really had to be somebody in the background that was looking at each one of these X-rays, and they were very revealing. So after a while, they were able to program these to recognize the patterns on these pixels of where metal might be on that individual. So that instead of saying there is a gun or a bomb on this person, it's saying there is metal there's a high likelihood that there is metal or something that should not get on the plane. You should probably check the person or the individual in this area. And that hence, helped increase security in the airports, and sped up the process of screening all of these travelers. Um, so now I always look, when I go through, I want to know what they're looking at, and there's just that little detection box that's saying there's a high likelihood that there's something here that you should check. It's not replacing TSA. You're not going through security without somebody there, but it's just improving the overall results, increasing the efficiency and the speed at which it needs to be done. Okay. So I bring this all back as we think of all these different examples. I want you to be thinking about how these might apply into healthcare, how they might apply into dentistry, and why dentistry? Why is it such a big deal in dentistry? Well, let's start off in healthcare. Why healthcare? Truly, it comes down to increasing clinical accuracy. So I want to introduce you to you met my boys. Well, this is their mom. This is Carly. And yes, on her shirt, you can see that she's a breast cancer survivor, and my boys are wearing a T-shirt that says "Son of a Warrior." Now, October of 22, we got hit with a curveball. It's one that I know there's probably a lot of listeners, a lot of people that are watching this that have dealt with. She felt a lump in her breast. Now, at the time, she was 39 years old, 38, turning 39. And so we do what you're supposed to do. We went in, we got the mammogram. The results of the mammogram came back, and the doctor said, Carly, what we see, it's not typical to what we see with breast cancer. He says, we know that there's a lump, feels something that's there. But at this point, we probably recommend that you go and you do an ultrasound. So, of course, we went and we did the ultrasound. The results came back. And they said, Carly, what we see, it's not typical to what we see with breast cancer. And then they said, you're young. You're 38 years old. I wouldn't worry about it too much. It could be a cyst. And then he said, he said these next three words that just kind of shocked me. Now, again, full transparency. I am not a clinician. I have been in dental technology for the last 13 years. I love it, but I've been around the industry long enough to know what these three words mean. And the doctor said, Carly, at this point, we can watch it. He said, we can watch it, and you can come back next year, and we'll get another scan. We'll see if it's changed, but I wouldn't be too worried about it. Or you can go and you can get a biopsy done. But just know that if you go and you get the biopsy done, like we've already done these two tests, and so you know what? It's not going to be covered by insurance. I didn't care. Obviously, I didn't care. We went, we got it done. The results came back, and they said, Carly, we regret to tell you that it's actually stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma. Now, Carly's doing well. She finished all her treatments. She beat it. But at this point, I was really upset. I was upset because I know that there is technology out there. There's technology that's available out there to help increase clinical accuracy. Here I was at the time working at Pearl, which is a company that is bringing AI analysis or detections into the dental space, utilized with Xrays. And I'm thinking, why is this even an issue? Where is the AI in mammography? I reached out. I found a company. I found a company that a CEO over in France, that was doing this, and he shared with me this case study. It was a 2017 case study, where he said, we were able to show that AI improved breast cancer detection by 50%. And he says what we did is we had 14 oncologists all review one mammogram, and they looked at it, and 7 of the 14 looked at it and said, there's breast cancer detected right here. And the other 7 said, nah, it's not typical to what we see. He says, Mike, at that point, I turned on the AI. I turned on the second opinion, the AI assist, gave that same image back to those 14 oncologists, and all 14 of them looked at it and said, okay, we see it now. And yep, we agree with the AI. So this is where, humans, we have limitations. Um, Now fast forward a little bit. My wife, she's now clear, free of breast cancer. But just 2 months ago, we go out to dinner with some of our dear friends, and the two ladies that you see on the right hand side are both wearing wigs. They are both right around 40 and 42 years old, and they're the one actually just rang the bell last week, finished her last round of chemo. The one in the middle, she's got about 2 more sessions left. They both had the exact same thing happen. They went in, they got the mammogram, don't worry about it. They did the ultrasound, not typical to what we see. You can do a biopsy, did the biopsy, came back and said, stage 2 invasive ductal carcinoma, each one of them. It's happening younger. But here's the thing is we have the technology now, and really there's no excuse. There's no excuse there. It's unfortunate that this happens, but really when we think about it, humans, we there is so much left up to human interpretation when looking at these black, white, and gray images. There just is. There are days where we come in fresh into a practice on a Monday morning and we are sharp and we never miss anything, versus 5 o'clock on a Friday. You should have been home at noon. You're still in the practice, you're still treating patients, and we may not be as sharp. We may be a little burned out. And we think about the number of X-rays that we view, or in our profession, how many X-rays day to day that we're looking at. It's very similar to if you ever gone to the airport and you're walking through duty free and you go through the perfume section, right? And I know for myself, I'm a sucker. I always go and I smell the different colognes. But after about 4 or 5, everything starts to blend together. There's actually a similar thing that happens, is optical burnout, where it's specifically a study that was done with radiologists that said after a certain number of X-rays, right, everything starts to blend together. It's very similar to going to that perfume shop and smelling all these different perfumes. And they said after about 18 to 20 X-rays, that it's recommended and suggested to kind of get up, walk around, change pace a little bit. And so really AI in healthcare, it comes down to accuracy, right? So there's a couple different reasons why AI in healthcare is such a big deal. We think about how data intensive this industry is. Healthcare generates valuable data rendered useless by the limitations of human processing and the analytic ability. It's very complex, very interdisciplinary. Healthcare involves complex decision-making processes, often which exceed the bounds of human faculty. There are many times where it is on the fence, and you can't blame them, right? It's like, well, it's not typical to what we see, which is probably true. It might not be typical to what we see. There are limitations as to what we can see with the human eye. It's very inconsistent. Humans are error prone. We make mistakes. The best of us, we make mistakes. And then in the end, it's very inefficient and costly. If we think about how many people it would take for us to scan through all of our practice management software to compute data, it would cost a lot of money and it would take a lot of time. So AI in healthcare today, this is a massive industry and it's exploding because where it can come in and make up for the limitations that we as humans have. Okay. Now it's also rapidly increasing. So we look at AI in dentistry. AI in dentistry, every few decades, there's a major advancement in our industry that it's hard to imagine going back to the days where we didn't have digital dentistry. I mean, I remember practices that were, really hesitant to move things to the cloud. Um, and they liked the paper charts. But yet very few of us would probably say, you know what, I would love to go back to paper charts. But there was a lot of fear when this first came out. It was like, where am I scanning this to? Where's it going to go? What if the cloud blows away? Right. But now we just can't imagine practicing without this kind of technology. But with AI coming into this space, we know we're only scratching the surface, and we know that AI will be an essential utility across the dental field within the next 5 years. And in fact, probably a lot less than that. It will be an expectation, and we're seeing that more and more. Um, Now, also with how intensive our industry is with X-rays, how many X-rays we view, I believe that this is why dentistry is in the process of leapfrogging the rest of medicine. With the number of X-rays that we view and the need for artificial intelligence, AI is here to stay. So when I talk about the number of X-rays, let's just kind of break this down a little bit. 1.4 billion dental X-rays are captured in the US every year. Now, this quadrant right here makes up about 40% of all of the medical imaging is dental. 40%. 60% is everything else, but 40% is right here. There's a massive number of X-rays that we view, and if we look at U.S. patients, across the country, 86% of patients in the US have had some sort of dental imaging done compared to the rest of the body, where it really only touches about 10 to 15%. So we think of the number of radiologists that are in other fields. Again, this is only 60%. This is 40%. How many oral and maxillofacial radiologists do you think there are versus radiologists in other fields? 190, less than 200, but yet 50,000 in other fields. So breaking these down by the numbers, there's a lot of need for a second opinion. 43% of caries and X-rays are undiagnosed, according to the CDC. 20% of caries diagnosed in patients are not actually caries. And this one kills me. This is like a coin toss. 49% of periapical radiolucencies in X-rays are undiagnosed. So this leads me to kind of sharing a case study that was done with the Dental AI Council. The Dental AI Council is a group of companies that came together to help advance AI in the field of dentistry. There was a case study that was done in 2019, and this case study involved 136 dentists that all reviewed the same FMX. And were told to go in and to annotate and to mark up what they saw and also what a whole mouth treatment plan would look like in their practice. So one of the examples here, and I know that these X-rays, it all comes down to quality of X-ray. I also know that we can't diagnose with X-ray alone. But just focusing in right here, okay? If I were to ask you what you see, what stands out to you? Now, depending on the different clinicians, and their eyes might be going all over the place saying, well, I see this, I see that. In the end, this result right here, okay, tooth number 3, this one is a little astonishing to me because about 51, almost 52% said that there was no caries detected. The other half said that there was. And 40% said there was no recurrent decay. 60% said that there was. It was kind of split right down the middle. The next example, okay, if you look right here, I want you to think about what would the treatment plan cost be to repair or restore this tooth? Not necessarily what you see, but in your practice specifically, what would the treatment plan cost be to restore this tooth? In a live audience where we can interact a little bit more, and you can put this in the chat if you'd like. Again, I know that it's hard just to use an X-ray alone to diagnose, but looking at this, if it's a root canal, if it's a filling, crown, what would that cost be? Oftentimes the results come in and that's like, 300, 500, 1,000, 1,500. And now it almost sounds like an auction. But at the end of the day, with this case study, tooth number 19, 26% said between about $500, 0 and 500. 37% said it was up to 1,000. Okay. 21% said between 1,000 and 3,000. And then 16% said between $3,000 and $5,000. Now, I completely respect and understand dentistry is an art. It's an art. People treat differently. Some are more aggressive, some are a little bit more conservative, and that is okay, and that's expected. The problem arises in your practice when you've got an associate that sees a patient and they come up with a treatment plan. That patient goes out of town. They finally come back weeks, maybe a month later, 2 months later, and wants to move forward with the treatment plan, only to find out that's not how I would probably move forward with it. That's not what I would recommend. Now, at the end of the day, with these 136 dentists all reviewing this one FMX, there were whole mouth treatment plans coming in ranging from $300 to $36,000. There was less than a 50% average diagnostic concurrence. It was astounding. So, with artificial intelligence, this is where AI can be used as a second opinion on X-rays. Here's really the nuts and bolts of the problem. The human eye has limitations. The human eye can only see and differentiate between 30 and 50 different shades and tones of gray, okay? The equivalent thereof. Now, artificial intelligence can come in and to help break down and differentiate between 500 to 700 different shades and tones of gray. So looking at an X-ray like this, again, if I were to put this up and ask, what you see here, what stands out to you, our eyes might go to different spots. Now, if we're using this to present this to the patient, to say, all right, do you see this gray area right here, this kind of darker gray spot? Let me show you what the patient sees. Here's kind of an AI rendition of what the patient sees. The patient's like, wait a second, everything is black, white, and gray. Is this a picture of my teeth? Is this a picture of my toes? Have you heard that one before? But it's like, well, no, I don't see it. I don't understand what you're showing me. But now AI, for the first time, can really help the patient see and truly comprehend what the trained eye, what the clinician is seeing. So as soon as the X-ray is taken, now we can have AI come in, recognizing, again, going back to the examples I gave before, recognizing the patterns, right? The patterns of the pixelations to say there is a high likelihood that there is calculus detected in this area, or caries over here. So let me just zoom in a little bit to kind of show you how the AI is able to not just highlight, but also show you a quantitative breakdown in this area right here, that 96% of the decay found here is in the dentin and 4% in the enamel, showing bone level measurements down to 100th of a millimeter from the CEJ to the crest, highlighting areas of calculus, highlighting areas of periapical radiolucencies. Okay. And then in the end, really breaking down all of having AI analyze the X-ray to break down all the different parts of the tooth to help the patient see what it is we're talking about. We're going to watch it because it's only in this area, or it hasn't encroached into the dentin, or or coming back here, like, yeah, this red spot right here, this area of decay, as soon as it touches the purple, we're talking about a completely different treatment plan. Helps them see it and understand it in a different light. So this is where AI can come in and help give color and help give some understanding, not just to the patients, but really to help the team all be on kind of a level playing field and see what's going on. Now, it is never a replacement for the dentist. And going back to one of the comments earlier in the chat about Chat GPT, sometimes the AI does make a mistake. And so as it's not a replacement for the clinician always has the last say. Clinician is always able to go in and say, you know what? I see why it's showing it as a cow and not a dog, right? I see why it's maybe showing this area as decay, and you can go in and you can delete that out because again, the clinician is the final say there. Okay. Now, a lot of times I get the question of, well, how accurate is AI? Well, it really comes down to the quality of X-rays as well. Some of our assistants, they take amazing X-rays. Others, it's like, oh man, it's hard to get the right assistant to take the great X-rays at the right angulation and everything else. But to answer the question, there was a study that was done by UCLA, and the study that was done by UCLA actually in 2023, that was actually using Pearl's second opinion. Okay, and we didn't know about it until the study was done. But there was 87 students that were coming out of dental school, and they were all asked to review a subset of X-rays. And upon doing so, what was found was that the accuracy of these dental students coming out of dental school was about 51% compared to second opinion, or compared to the artificial intelligence, which was 94%. So again, not 100%, but really want to stress that when the dentist and AI can come together utilizing the software together, basically, that's where the efficiency and the accuracy are able to improve, and sometimes are able to see things that are limited by the human eye, right? So going back to increasing efficiency, I know a lot of us, especially any of my practice owners, office managers, at the end of the day, practicing, going from operatory to operatory, we feel burned out, right? There is such thing as burnout. There is such thing as decision fatigue. Decision fatigue because we've been making decisions all day. This is a real thing. We talk about decision fatigue. This is the deteriorating quality of decisions made by an individual after a long session of decision making. So many of my dentist friends out there, they work with no other dentist in the practice. They are working alone as the only dentist there, and sometimes there's nobody else to run something by or say, "Hey, can you take a look at this real quick?" So there's a lot of decisions that they have to make, really tough decisions. Now, I don't know how this is measured, but some of you may have heard this before. On average, it's estimated that we make 35,000 decisions every day. 35,000. So how do we minimize? How do we kind of start reducing the number of decisions we have to make, or what do we do in order to overcome this burnout? Like, I love this, the fact that Steve Jobs, if you ever look at his wardrobe, talk about a minimalist. He goes down to wearing the same thing every day because that's one less decision that he has to make every day. Now, I bring this up because I recently read a book that kind of really kind of changed my view on time. We are so busy, and there comes a point in the practice where we can only do so much in the practice. Like, you can only throw so many bodies until what do? You add operatories, you add human capital to the mix in order to grow, unless we are able to leverage and maximize technology for this. So there is a matrix here that I want to explain. And I love this, where I want you to think about what it is in your practice that lights you up, that you love doing day to day. What is it that lights you up and that makes you a lot of money? That area right here, that's where we want to be spending the majority of our time. Now, there are those tasks, be that being on the phone, insurance, whatever, that don't necessarily light us up, don't necessarily make us a lot of money. And these are the things that we want to leverage technology for, to allow us to buy our time back so that we can spend more time in this quadrant right here of the areas that make the practice a lot of money and that light you up, that fuel you, right? Where you just feel alive, and kind of reignite that passion, right? So we want to make sure that we're looking for these solutions to free up time, not just for you, but for the team members in your practice. One of those examples that I want to give comes down to, I want you to think about all of the charts that you have, all of your patient records that you've got in your practice management software. And if you were to ask somebody to go in or ask a team member, a number of team members, maybe third-party dentists, to say, you know what, I want you to go through and look at all of my X-rays and make sure that we didn't miss anything. I want you to look at all of that and compare that with what I have in the patient charts. That would take a long time and it would be probably really tedious. Now we can leverage AI to run these, what we call a historical analysis, where we can actually go back and scan the last 18 months of X-rays in a practice. Now, not only scanning the X-rays, but comparing the findings with what AI found with what's in the practice management software. So here's um, an example of a practice that found 1,400, almost 1,500 scaling candidates based upon subgingival calculus, based upon bone level measurements, and compared that with what the AI found, right? And what's in the practice management software to say, well, you've only treatment planned 600, you've only completed 200. So here's the list of all your patients in the practice that are potential scaling candidates estimated at about $640,000. And now we can look into that list and get the right patients in the practice to fill any of those openings in the schedule with the right patient, those who we know need treatment, not just who have unscheduled, but undiagnosed opportunity. This is where it truly becomes a game changer. So for the team, we now have this technology where we can actually see day to day on the schedule when we come in and we do that morning huddle. We could look and say, okay, we've got 10 patients coming in. Now, AI found 14 undiagnosed opportunities. AI also found that we have one miscoded prophy. I have a patient coming in for a cleaning. They should be in periodontal maintenance. AI helps spot that, right? It's that second set of eyes. So any of those color-coded appointments that are in blue, we can then take a look at those and see any of the areas of undiagnosed opportunities. So it helps the team hone in and look for, what is potentially what they missed maybe last time, or the areas that we want to just double check, right? That we never treatment planned. So in the last minute or so, I want to just talk about what this does to as far as a financial impact in the practice. Now, not just increasing the standard of care, but also production and profitability in the practice. So dentists are using AI to strengthen case presentation and build greater patient trust. Patients love this. I'm going to skip over a video here, but there's a video of a patient that's basically saying, for the first time, I can see it and understand what the dentist has been talking about because the X-ray lights up and shows everything that's going on. And we find that sometimes the patients end up self-diagnosing, saying, well, tell me about this spot over here we haven't talked about, right? So it really helps build trust. And when it comes to case acceptance, it's not just trust in you, but it comes down to trust in your team, in the whole office, but truly understanding the procedure. Now, the case study that I just want to share is with a practice on the East Coast that wanted to implement artificial intelligence because they know that there was a massive opportunity around period. They were underdiagnosing periodontal disease. So what they did is they implemented artificial intelligence to give that tool to help the patient see what's truly going on and to ensure that the team is not missing anything. So I actually pulled the numbers for this practice. It was one of my friend's practices, and I said, I want to look at two different KPIs. I want to look at what the average production per visit was in the practice 6 months before versus 6 months after AI was implemented. And I also want to look at the perio percentage. So this is a massive practice, seeing about 2,000 patients every month. And the average production per visit was $254. Okay. Oh, sorry. Let me just come back here. The average production per visit was $254. When they started using artificial intelligence, their perio percentage was 6%, pretty low. Now, just following that, average production per visit jumped up by $74. Now, by 2,000 visits in the practice, massive, massive practice, that was an increase of $148,000 in the practice. Not only that, but the 6 months following, their perio percentage jumped to 14%. So just coming down to it and wrapping this all up, I had mentioned before, I'm from Utah. And in the deserts in Utah, if anyone's ever been out hiking in the deserts, you may have come across something that looks like this, which is a kind of a landmark, right? It's a big arrow. And I wonder, what are these used for? Well, in the days of airmail, back in the days of airmail, these were used by pilots, right? Flying their planes from point A to point B, looking down, flying by sight, looking down for where they needed to turn to get them from point A to point B. These were the best pilots in the world. They did not need all the instruments, right? They could fly by sight. They only had the little fuel gauge. Um, Now, if I were to ask you, hey, you know what? I'm gonna hook somebody up here with a free flight from here to Africa with the best pilot in the world, but this is going to be your plane. How many of you would say, "Oh, sign me up"? Or I could say, "Oh, you know what? There is a flight. It's a Delta flight. I can put you on this flight instead. But I should probably just let you know that the pilot, he's only been out of flight school for 2 years. Hands down, I think everyone would say, you know what? That's the one that I would rather fly in. And my point is, when it comes to that, and for the clinicians that say, you know what, why would I need AI with X-rays? Right? I've been looking at X-rays for the last 20 years. I don't need AI to help me with this. Patients, it's their perspective that matters. It's not about, it's not necessarily about what we feel is like, well, I don't need that. I never make a mistake. More and more, we're seeing patients that are reaching out asking, where are there companies that are using artificial intelligence? Because I know for myself, I will never let my daughters go and get a mammogram anywhere that is not backed by AI. The technology's out there. It is now a standard for me, an expectation. So with that, I want to thank you again for sticking with me and for the comments in here. Um, I'm going to pass this back over to Catapult. And again, thank you so much. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.